Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us um, for this webinar that is going to be looking at understanding business in a post-COVID-19 world. Before I start, please allow me to thank my colleagues Janari Gongora and Cyril Get for all the work that they've done in the background and for assisting us in the delivery of this webinar today. So let's get and dig down into the discussion and the topic on the table today. On the 11th of March 2020, the World Health Organization, WHO, classified the new coronavirus as we know it today, the COVID-19, as a pandemic due to the increase in the confirmed cases of individuals who have contracted the virus worldwide and continue to be infected by COVID-19. As businesses around the globe are enacting travel bans, quarantine, and suspending face-to-face interactions and meetings, policymakers, businessmen, politicians, and practitioners have implemented a number of new policies and procedures to aim to mitigate the public health effects of COVID-19. At the same time, the COVID-19 crisis has revealed the severe inequality and inequity that exists in business worldwide. Let's look at an example. Issues surrounding access to online goods and services and having access to internet for those customers in developing and transitional economies have taken on heightened importance. Various business leaders, politicians, and opinion makers warn us, and I quote, "The COVID-19 health crisis will affect product and service mobility and delivery in 2020, and certainly for years to come. As a result, the cancellation of events, the closure of shops, malls, offices, businesses, traveling, and moving to the reality of teleworking virtually have disparate impacts on internationalization and the globalization of business. And that is why I am particularly delighted and honored to introduce you our three panelists who will share their thoughts and their insights, but more importantly, their very personal experience. They are trying to look at the past to inform their operational strategies and implementation for today, but more importantly, to help them to plan for their tomorrow. So let me start without further ado. And I would like to introduce you to Julian Bouladuraj. He is the startup founder with 6 years of experience in running a high-growth tech startup, growing from a team of 2 people to more than 50 full-time employees across 3 continents. He managed a fundraising campaign and process in which he has successfully raised more than 1 million British pounds and won the London Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. Please take our congratulations on board too there. He writes, the list of achievement goes on, but what I would like to mention particularly is that he's a regular contributor in terms of venture identification, growth strategies, and financial modeling that are regularly featured in publications such as TechCrunch, Forbes, Wired, Financial Times, The Wall Street Journal, Handelsblad, ARD, the British Broadcasting Corporation, and Medium. So as you can see, somebody that is certainly very qualified both an experience to share some of his vision of this business world that we are soon to embrace after the COVID-19 reality. Then Alexandra Severino, she is a legal consultant, independent researcher, and trainer. Alexandra has a background in law. She has a master's in international humanitarian law, human rights, and she specializes in European law, namely and specifically European contract law and business law areas. Alexandra works as an independent consultant for the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, where she coordinates various master level programs with universities such as the Oxford Brookes University. She's also a adjunct faculty with EU Business School. Alexandra also consults and she gives legal opinion for law firms and other clients, but ultimately her passion lies in learning and education. Manal, our last panelist, Manal Nekmeldin, she is director of channel, direct channel director at the Al Arabi Group, and she's also an associate lecturer at EU Business School, but founder and CEO of E-Business School in Egypt. Manal is a subject expert in the area of online and e-business. She started her e-business career in 2003. She is working at her family business, which started 19 years ago, a company with around 30,000 employees, and which was started by her grandfather, some 56 years ago. The list goes on, but what is really important, as you heard in my opening statements, is that we are talking about the importance of automation and the e-learning environment, the e-business environment, and how do you create value. So that's enough of me. I am going to...
John, sorry to interrupt, but I think people cannot see you. The screen is black, apparently. This is the comment.
Okay. Is that, voila, hopefully we are back again. So without any further ado, Manal, it is my pleasure to give you the word for your opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us today. So we believe that in any crisis, there are opportunities. It's about how companies can adapt, how they can be flexible and agile, how capable they are to fit the new business model for the new dynamics in the market. So also people will always remember how you made them feel during the crisis time. In our company at the time that everyone were talking about laying people off or cutting their salaries, we decided to pay the salaries in advance plus some incentive. So not only our employees appreciated what we did, but all our customers as well. So customers started different campaigns on social media to support our companies and buy our products. That's what will people always remember, how you acted during hard time.
Thank you so much, Manal. Julien, you have the floor for your opening remarks.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here. So yeah, over the last weeks and by now months, we've, apart from this being quite a tragedy on many personal levels, we've seen many companies being forced to adapt some form of digitalization in their day-to-day routine, even companies, small businesses that we mainly work with who haven't moved that far into that area yet. And slowly but surely, we're seeing a lot of opportunities, not only for the employer, but also for the employees in terms of flexibility, new skill sets, and also more personal time. But I will elaborate on this a little bit further later on.
Thank you so much, Julien. Alexandra, your opening remarks?
Thank you, John Hans, and I'm really humbled to be, in a roundtable with such remarkable people. Thank you also, Julian and Manal. So the key idea that, for me, that I really would like to highlight and hopefully reflect on together with you today is that COVID definitely, and this we identify all, marks a shift for businesses as we have understood them so far. And one can take one of two approaches, or a combined approach if you want, one based on the challenges or other based on the opportunities. So as an optimistic person by nature, I choose to focus on the opportunity side. And one of the reasons for that is because I think if we are stuck to a business model and stuck to an aspiration of getting back to what is normal, the so-called normal, we are leaving behind all the lessons learned from this challenging period, characterized by confinement and physical distance. And I say physical distance intentionally because it doesn't have necessarily to mean social distance. So I think that we have a role as business owners towards our society by incorporating all the opportunities that came off of this challenging period, as Julian just highlighted. So I would really keen to dig into this reflection.
Thank you so much. Allow me just to wrap up quickly some of the salient points in your opening remarks. So we heard from Manal. She was saying it's really important how you as a business and an organization make individuals feel during this period, because as soon as you're going to come to the other side of this dark chapter, that is the value and the loyalty that they will demonstrate to you as an organization. Julian, in your comments, the one thing that struck me, you were saying, there were all these challenges in the way, but you were saying there's also more personal time, and you said you would elaborate. So I'm very curious to hear. And Alex, you were saying, we don't have a choice. We have to be optimistic, and in that optimism, we at the same time need to challenge new business practices and the way in which the social contract of business works, because we see the divide, we see the digital divide, and so many of the business practices and paradigms that are being taught is simply not sufficient for the post COVID-19 world. So let me go straight back to you, Julian, and say, please elucidate for us, what do you mean by something making more personal? Because what I have heard and what I personally experience is now I spend so much time where I'm in confinement now for almost 2 months in Portugal, and connected time, computer time is work time, and I am bad at time management. So how is this more personal?
Oh, John, I definitely agree with you. I think the first several weeks for myself and also for my team, whenever we try to have a weekly catch up to also talk about how we feel and about the workflow, and everyone said that they started working 20-30% more, just because you do spend a lot of time in front of your laptop. Also, you're less allowed to go out. But I think after a while, not only people within my team, but also some of my friends and some of our clients we spoke to, they started to organize their time and become better in time management, and started to learn to work from this home environment, which a lot of them were not used to before. And this meant that effectively, some of them, depending on how long they took to commute to work, all of a sudden had 1 or even 2 hours spare time a day, adding up to 10 hours a week, which was quite incredible. And also, I think people learned to become more effective on meetings, because at some point people were quite used to whether it was in-person meetings or online. But since the lockdown started, people were pulled into any kind of online meetings. Also, I was in some meetings where there were 20 people with some of our clients, and I believe half of them didn't have to be there. So I feel like companies and also their employees and overall the teams learn to structure themselves and become more self-disciplined, and not just say, okay, we're going from work until 9 to 5, but let's get the most out of this time we have at home and work more effectively. And we could actually see this in our own lines, but also with some of the clients, which I found quite interesting, and with myself. And it is, I think, some part about discipline and some part about saying, okay, you know, I will leave my laptop alone now, because it's very easy to get stuck in front of the laptop doing a mix out of personal stuff and work. And I think this will further develop, where people start to feel more comfortable working from home or from a general remote setup. You know, once we're allowed to go out again, they could work from wherever they are. And this is something I've already been kind of favoring for many years now, because I could feel some really, really great output from people actually being able to work when they want to work and how they want to work. Of course, this is confined to certain industries, and, you know, some industries won't be able to work in this way. But I think there are many industries that will have a huge benefit from this, on both on the employers and employee side.
Thank you so much. Manal, if I could turn to you and say, okay, let's try and build on this argument that was put forward and model of operating a business right now. So for instance, for you in the MENA region, how would you then be able to implement, you know, such a strategy? Because we know that not everybody has access to internet, may not have the technology at home. And I am talking about the fact that we know the spy and spamming and hacking has increased 1,000-fold. So with your massive operation, Manal, how would you put such a system into place, and what would you see as the priorities?
For my company, we previously have this experience for working from home and working for flexible hours. And also we previously measured this the performance level for the employees working from home or having flexible hours. We found out that usually employees performance more than 8.5 hours per day. So we were somehow prepared, but it is totally different, as Julian said. Everyone is expecting that you do nothing, so it's okay to come to a meeting. So it's very important to have the time management. About the internet in Egypt and the penetration for smartphones make it so easier for everyone to have the access to the internet. And actually we have 40 million person over the Facebook and over 100 million mobile phone penetration in Egypt. So everyone can access to the internet very easy.
Thank you so much, Manal. If I could ask Alexandra, so if I could ask you to put on your legal cap now, what instruments are there when we now see the potential of businesses that would say, hey, this is actually, I can downsize in terms of all those hard costs, in terms of, you know, office space and so on. I can actually now adopt to this highly new effective model of making sure that my people continue to work from home, and that actually I don't need the same staff effective, so I can actually downsize. What instruments and what can be done to ensure that there is an objective level of downsizing rather than an abusive approach that simply takes you know, employees as disposable commodities?
That's actually a very interesting question, John-Hans, because we know that teleworking is a modality enshrined in most of the labor codes of the European member states, and some of them were more well advanced in implementing it. It was not the case of Portugal, the context in which I am as well, as you know. So it will be very interesting to see. You know, it was from the legal standpoint, seeing all the businesses coming to ask for legal counseling in terms of, I will make this now operational and assess it for the future. Okay, so what again, bringing it back to this context, and I think it also happened in other member states. So there were, during COVID times, there were extraordinary pieces of legislation on layoff procedures with certain rules and limits. So in order to be able to protect, you know, employees' rights as it should be. But your question is interesting when we look at the future, how this will unfold and in each ways. What I think it will be extremely important is, again, to have this balance between the legal instruments, which were already, you know, prescribed by law, and were a possibility like layoff, and adapted to make sure that they are not used as a standard form procedure, but are assessed in each single case for each business. So with a certain level of regulation mechanism, so to ensure, of course, fundamental rights, which will be especially important during the period that we'll face, in which we'll most likely face some level of economic recession.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alexandra. Manal, if I could come back to you, and if I can ask you to, let's fast forward, and let's say we are now in the middle of 2021. That is when most experts say to us, we will come back to some form of normality, but this new normal will be very much based on this distance economy, where you're going to see the reality until such time as we have an effective vaccine against COVID-19. The reality is this virus will very much be a shadow that we're going to be living with. So can I ask you, what are those business measures, and in terms of the strategic vision and implementation of your business practices, what are those some of those elements that you would like to share with us, and that based on your experience you could forward as 3 key recommendations for those of us that would like to learn from your experience?
Someone working in digital business since 2003 and see all the changes happening now and the digital transformation. According to some researches, that the increase in e-commerce is in MENA region is more than 80%, and for the search for e-learning is more than 200%. So there are great opportunities for the digital transformation, and whoever think about it, changing the business model and make it more suitable for the current circumstances and capture these opportunities, I guess there is no back to normal. There is no back to normal. We already gained some new behavior, like the working from distance, and people tried for a while the working from distance now and see how it's more focused and the performance level is much higher. So I guess the people will stay working from home for some jobs, and also the e-commerce is there is a huge transformation also in this part, and also the e-learning. So I do recommend that whoever see the opportunity over there can capture and gain this opportunity to do some business in this field.
Could can I just ask you to clarify, define for us in this context e-learning?
It is not only online courses, it's the whole experience of the digital learning with also the interactive classes, the practices, the gamification, and all these interaction. I guess people already tried, they are forced to, but they tried and they like it so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have a question from the participants, and it's Rachel Arcas. And Gillian, if I can ask you to answer this question. And she says she would like to ask the panel to think about the financial world. What has it done and to change, funds and shares, and so the monetary policies, and do you think so? Which changes have been made? Do you think it's enough? And do you think what are your predictions in terms of future changes? Nice to have or necessity?
Right. Thanks a lot for the question, Raquel. It's quite an interesting one because, of course, right now you hear about governments going further into heavy debt, moving on, and I think some people do understand the concept. Others, you hear comments about people particularly in the US, saying, "Okay, where has this money been?" But in the end, it's printing money out of thin air, and this is debt that eventually has to get paid back. So I think in the last few days, a lot of scientists and economists went back to the drawing board, and they sort of came to the conclusion, okay, as long as a country can grow faster than its debt, it's fine to continue taking on debt, which I think is an interesting construct. I haven't properly looked into it yet, but me being here in Berlin in Germany, I tell you that they paid out grants to solo freelancers in the first 2 weeks. I had a lot of friends applying to it. They had to fill out a form online, a very simple form, and literally the next day you had 5,000 euros on your bank account and you don't have to pay them back. So this is one thing where you could see in Germany that it kept some part afloat because people were able to pay their rent, especially, let's say, for solo freelancers who might be living month to month. So this is one aspect, and another part where other countries might have been a bit slower and they're seeing the consequences now. So I think this is one part, and another part which I found very great from you, Manal, that you managed to pay the salaries for your employees ahead. I heard barely any companies doing this, and I think it's great. If you're in a position, I'm surely it helped them because there was a huge aspect of employees being scared about not being able to pay their rent. And this then leads on also, of course, to many other issues. So I think there's a lot moving right now. And I think the general perception about debt globally is changing. In the US, you have this, in New York, you have this time tracker, this debt clock, right, that is ticking, and it has been speeding up over the last weeks. And I think, yeah, it's interesting. I don't really have an opinion about it yet, but I know that the views from economists on debt now is fairly different to how it was 3 months ago. So keeping this in mind and kind of seeing how this develops is going to be very interesting.
Thank you so much, Julian. Alex, if I could ask, so we have a question from Angela Agrazal, and she's participating from Panama, and she says, I'm still struggling. I'm working from home and I have all my business goals that I'm responsible for, but I just still don't get it. I don't manage. What advice can you give us to how can we plan our tasks and our goals working from home more effectively?
Thank you, Jonas. It's actually, thank you so much also, Angela, because it's something I struggle with too. Of course, I'll share with you my tips, and they I hope they serve you in any way. But first, while I don't picking up on what Julian said about having more time, I think the divide is also to do with that. And for the moment, with schools closed, it also a divide between people that are at home teleworking with children that are not in school and also have to manage these other roles, and the ones that have other different family scenarios in which they can work and establish that divide more objectively. So in my case, what I think it's very, very important, Angela, is to, of course, still keep our business, our job business goals in mind and what we have to do in mind, and try to draft a plan, but still be flexible to accept that it's likely that sometimes will not go according to the plan, and adjustments will have to be made. What I think the crisis brought to, and I think this is for the future, was enhancing our flexibility skills, but also this promotion of emotional intelligence on both sides, so employees and employers. And from my experience, again, to focus on the plans, try to set one for each day and try to follow it as closely. But also be honest or not, and just to be honest with our time, honest with the persons in relation to which we have responsibilities as well. So this said, I was not always able to comply with my deadlines, but this should be the goal, and I'm sure you'll do better with the time. As Julian said, it's an adaptation process, and I'm far better now than I was at the beginning when we started with confinement.
Thank you so much, Alex. If we could now turn to, we have a question, and Manal, if I could ask you to take this one. So this question is from Marx, and Marx says, part of the post-COVID economic strategies in some African countries is that Africa should have a more inclusive economy. And his question is, how can we facilitate the participation of the social scientific community within this economic discussion going forward?
Okay. As I said before, there are great opportunities, not only in Africa. In this crisis, we can come up with more and more opportunities. I see some business already changed their business model, and like some restaurant, they start sending the ingredients to their customers, or some coffee shops that they are now sending the coffee set to do your coffee at home. So there are many opportunities. I believe in that. And for Africa, I guess they should work more to analyze this opportunity and work closely to capture all what they can from the economy right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jose is asking us a question, and he's saying, what are the top considerations that businesses wanting to survive a post-coronavirus would need to have for their business model to remain relevant and successful? Julian, if I can pose that one to you and ask Manal to build on that one. To you, Julian.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I think this one obviously quite depends on whatever industry we're talking about, but let's try to make it a bit general. As I've mentioned before, just a general digitalization, and whether that is employees and teams being able to connect with each other or with their clients, and vice versa, and also very strong analytics. So by this, I mean being able to see who's engaging with you, who's actually interested in your product, because of course there will be a shift from, let's say, high street stores to websites or other forms where they're being displayed. So it's I think what a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, still have to learn is to not just say, okay, we put a front here so people can see us, but actually really analyze it and understand what's happening and tweak it, because otherwise they might be missing out in this aspect. And secondly, again, coming back to employees, offering them certain options on how they can work within a framework that actually works for both of them. Of course, it has to be feasible and in the end also profitable to some extent. But I do believe that employees should be able, within that framework, be able to sort of choose how they work, because I know that there have been a lot of opinions about people saying whether they want to work from home, or they like to go into the office, or they like to sit with their team for 2 days a week. So there are different structures. So I think employers should be open to this. And as everyone said earlier, not just go back to old habits, because they will not survive, in my opinion anyway. So I think just trying to get the best out of what we've learned in the last 2 months.
Thank you, Julian. Manal?
I totally agree with what Julian said. It's not the time for waiting. It's the time for do more analysis, and it always starts from the customers. If we understand the function the customers are in need for that now, we can offer them a benefit. So one of our products, for example, is the TV. It's about how you deliver the message, the communication message to your customer, how you show them that this TV, they can need it in this time. For example, we build the content that the TV, it has some VOD, so you can spend some good time at home. Another one is that the TV can be a display screen for your meeting, and another one, it can be a game. There is a lot of game for your kids. So as long as you understand the need of your customer in the current circumstances, you can offer them different benefits and engage them to your business. And also the business model, if you see that this business model is not working, you can change to another one as well, as the restaurant and the coffee shop already did for sending the coffee set to the customers instead of selling coffee.
Thank you so much, Manal. We have a question from Granta, and the question is, how do you think the job market will change? And what traits and skills do employers look for in potential employees? And let's think post-COVID-19 now. And what would you recommend that I put in my CV, and what will future employers look for in the public and retail sectors? And I would actually like each one of you to answer that one. If I could start with Alex.
Sure. Thank you, John Hansen. Thank you, Granta. So firstly, I think that the job market, one of the ideas that comes immediately to my mind was all this discourse about the gig economy as being an issue and a problem always in the discourse. And now the gig economy, so the fact that people might have different jobs, different types of jobs in different areas might be a new reality, or something that they even wish to pursue in the future, because they were already experimenting different things at the time. So potentially filling in positions of other colleagues, doing a job they were not used to do, and again fostered by this whole environment of digitalization and new offers that have to be put forth for customers in line with their needs. So on the traits and skills that the employers might be looking at, I pick up on Julian's and Manal's points about being different, about all this idea of flexibility, but mostly also creativity and willingness to participate in the design of the business per se, participating on the decisions and how the business will from now on be framed as well. In regards to the CV, I would always recommend that you include something that you feel is in line with what the company is looking for and that you honestly have. And I think this is also a great great opportunity, and I'm sure we are all doing it, to look at our CVs and to see the areas which we want to improve and the skills and competencies that we want to gain in the meantime to respond to these new market trends. So again, to be really honest about your skills, to look specifically to the position you are looking for and see how you can frame what you already do in line with these new dimensions and goals. But again, to look, what can I do now to improve and to enhance the CV to better respond to what will be asked for me as an employee in the future, post-COVID.
Thank you, Alex. Manal?
Actually, for me, I usually hire for attitude because I believe that any skills can be learned. So for the post-COVID-19, I do believe that the digital transformation jobs will be increasing. Anything related to e-commerce, anything related to fintech or blockchain, e-learning, and also it's important to highlight that the employee is agile and flexible and can also play a multi-hat, because I guess that the one who has more than skills will have the better opportunity in the future that he can do multi-jobs.
Thank you, Manal. Julian.
Yeah, so I fully agree what Alexandra and Manal said, so that already outlines it fairly well. But obviously the job market is very challenging right now, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think it will be very challenging for several months to come. Having said this, as previously said, I think for you the great opportunity is that there are a lot of opportunities out there to learn online, to get qualifications. The main thing I would like to say here is to not just go and start doing this online course and this and that. I think find a structure, because there are some courses where you can just take a 2-day course and do some sort of certification where in the end, no one actually even really knows what they've learned. So really finding the right ones and understanding how they will help you, and then in turn, the organization you're going to be approaching. So I think that's important to find a structure, because I've recently read that online learning has gone up by 180% in the last 2 months, which is incredible. But I also have heard from several friends who decided to do online courses, who had a little bit more time at home, that they didn't really know how to use them. So I think if you do those courses, really put in the time initially and understand what kind of structure you want to follow, and maybe even do it something that can be ongoing. It doesn't just have to be something until you have a job. It could be something that where you invest 2 or 3 hours a week, and it's an ongoing thing. So that's something I have done. That's a lot of people in my team have done, and it's actually turning out to be very interesting. So yeah, that's my main recommendation in that regard.
Thank you very much to the 3 panelists. I would just like to add as well is, as you so elegantly said and shared the experience of your friends who have, signed up and then did some courses, almost see it as the different sides of the same coin. It is up to you, the individual, how you decide to engage in learning, development, and using every single opportunity to invest the time to update, to increase, and to continuously learn new skills. Here we are, the 4 of us, and we are constantly learning, constantly adapting, constantly informing ourselves. And you, in this highly disruptive world in which we live, prior to COVID-19, and now this, what I call the double whammy of this world in flux, now you have the second impact, COVID. It has become much more in flux, so much more complicated. But we have to inform ourselves so that we stay relevant, but relevant is very average, and to be able to continue to create, as Manal was saying, create value that people will recognize and then decide how deep they will put their hand in their pocket to engage with you is that secret. So you can have whatever you want on a CV. And as Alex is saying, is you need to be able to show in your person, in your skills, in your abilities, that you bring a new meaning, that you breathe life into those skill sets that you have displayed in your CV. And then take the time to invest and to continuously develop your capacities. I'm going to take one last question before we we start wrapping up, and this is from Geert Ormel, and he says, what may be some steps that governments of several countries may take to get all the workers who were laid off due to COVID-19 back into the workforce? Wow, that's a complicated one. But Manal, let's start with you, because you gave us quite an interesting insight where you said there is business and the social commitment of business towards its employees. And what your company is a testimony to is that you've actually given a whole new meaning to corporate social investment. And do you think that is the start of a new paradigm that we're going to see? How can that be translated now into government action? And then I would like to pass to Julian to share with us a little bit more, as you mentioned, in what Germany did in this, in terms of 5,000 euros that was given to people. And also the same question to Alex. But to Alex, I want to say, we know that we had the 2008-2009 economic impact globally, and the politicians constantly, when it comes to elections, they talk about the middle class and the middle class and the benefits for the middle class. But the reality is, so many of the middle class, their salaries and their working conditions have not improved. It is still what it was back in 2008 and 2009. So what can be done? Manal.
Okay, with a company with more than 40K employees, it wasn't that easy to take this decision. But as a market leader, we decided to do what we do believe. And believe me, the customers pay back to us in an amazing way. They did amazing campaign on social media to buy our products, and it is reflected on our sales in a very amazing way. Also, I do believe that the movement of the cash flow should continue, because this guarantee that everyone is staying in his business. So we started also an initiative in Egypt called Stay Home Egypt to support all the small and medium company startups to highlight that they are selling online or can deliver to people while they are staying home. And we have more than 500 companies registered on this website. We did the website and also the app. And also we started another initiative under this one with the seminars, a series of seminars to support the business owners who has the offline business to transfer their business to online one. So we are starting tomorrow this series of webinars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julian?
So I think, again, speaking here more about the part of Germany, we moved over here in 2016. Our headquarters are in London, so we've built a team here in Berlin. And for me personally, even though I am German Sri Lankan, I found it initially quite challenging hiring here in Germany, just because there are some regulations and also in regards to laying people off. You know, and as a startup, of course, you do not want to lay people off, but you are a lot more cautious when hiring someone, because, you know, it might take you a lot longer to part ways if you realize that it's not working out. And that's one part which I've heard a lot of from a lot of startup founders here in Germany, that they're a lot more slow on hiring people. So this is one thing which I've, especially here in Berlin, heard. They're trying to make it a bit easier, which might sound a little bit rough, but to hire, but also to fire. And I've heard this from a lot of people also on the employee side, where people say, it's hard for me to get hired because, you know, they think of so many factors, because it might be difficult for them to, let's say, get rid of me again, which is a tough term, but let's say that's really how they phrase it. And so I think there will be a push towards things becoming a bit easier, which I think will also work in favor of employees, because the employer will be able to make faster decisions, which is sometimes important, because right now, yes, there's huge unemployment, but there will be new opportunities. I think some companies now that they go bust, and some roles will just not be filled again. I think that's a sad truth, but this also means that new roles will come up. And I think especially talking about Germany, they will make it easier. So having lived in the UK for quite some time and having founded a company there, I say the UK makes it a lot easier for employers and for companies to hire individuals, and this also made it a lot easier for us to build a very strong team. So yeah, I think this is a move which is happening in Germany. For the rest of the world, it's difficult for me to say. I haven't really followed on this aspect that much, but I think this is something which is going to work in favor for everyone.
Thank you so much. Alexandra?
Thank you. Yes, so I think what Julian mentioned is important because we have similar, so the social state historical background behind us, which justifies all these labor laws in place, and there is all this discussion about it and what should be the role of labor laws in this case. And then the argument that, of course, if you want to have more flexibility in the labor market, then this should follow with measures from states in terms of social provision in cases where people do not have it, do not have an income or find themselves in unemployment situations. So picking up on your question to John, and concretely linking this to the financial crisis, so indeed it had a huge toll in terms of our economy, is quite known when compared to other countries in Europe. And indeed, so we were recovering very well in light of the tourism activities that started to come, because we were featured in some renowned publications about traveling, and then it followed and it was going really well. What does this mean in practical terms? So our economy was very rooted in these touristic related activities. So with confinement, there's no tourism, the flights are canceled, and so you can see the amount of jobs that will stop immediately, and that will take a long time to or never come back, and it will have huge impact indeed. On the other way around, I think the way in which the Portuguese society adapted and the business fabric adapted was indeed to at least for a while and for now to focus on the corporate responsibility level, many companies took the approach Manaus took with hers, and they transformed to produce masks to support the national healthcare system and to provide other types of services. So filling in a social responsibility that in a way people were starting to reclaim in light of they think it's right. So I don't think that's also why I opened with optimism. So I think that in terms of corporate social responsibility, it might be difficult to come back. People now know they can, companies can do better on that regard. And I think this can benefit society overall in a lens of sustainable economic development.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alexandra. We have 5 minutes left, so I am going to invite Julian to please give us your concluding comments.
So besides the things that I've mentioned earlier, I think more on a personal level, what helped me a lot, I feel like up until this pandemic, everything was just kept on getting faster and faster. The way we worked, the way we traveled, the way we lived. And I would like to encourage everyone we all don't know how much longer it's going to take, whether there's going to be a second wave. I don't know. I'm not a specialist, but whatever happens, to trying to see the positive in it, and also taking this time to reflect and make the most of it, because not just focusing on that it's either boring or very challenging, and I'm sure everyone has huge challenges, but always trying to consider on one part what can you do for yourself in terms of reflection, and how can you help others that might not be as fortunate as us, even sitting here in front of a computer and listening to others talk, because there's a huge part that might be struggling on a very different level. So I think that's very important to keep in mind. And yeah, trying to move closer together in a virtual way. Okay, not in a real way, because I think this will be restricted for a long time to come. But just also just looking a little bit outside the box. What can you do for yourself and for the people around you? And I think it will help everyone to some extent.
Thank you so much, Julian. Alexandra?
Sorry, thank you. So I fully agree with Julian. So it might be difficult, but it's worth trying to always, it doesn't mean that you have to be optimistic all day and jumping and, oh, this is amazing, because this romanticism around confinement can also be detrimental. There are many people, a detrimental discourse. There are many people indeed that cannot, take the time to learn and to focus on acquiring new skills. But if you can, just take the chance. It's the time. And my final point is that I indeed came back to Portugal from Geneva amidst the financial crisis, because I thought at the time I had a responsibility towards my country, and decided to come back. And what I feel is that during that challenging period, all the knowledge and skills that I acquired through education, and this is in a broad sense, as Manal referred, so all types of e-learning education you can get hold of, it paid off in the end. So I truly recommend you taking the time if you have it. And I wish you all good luck in everything.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Manal?
I totally agree with Alexandra. It's a very hard time. Everyone has his own responsibility. Every company has its own responsibility. By the way, also we are working in developing ventilators but we're still waiting for the approvals. So it's very hard time also, as Julian said, and it's very important to take care of ourselves and our well-being. And maybe it worked for some people that to put small achievement and daily achievement. So for me, during this period, I walked for 50 kilometers in 20 days, which is a great achievement for me because I stopped playing sport for a long time. So this may help and make you feel much better to put the small achievement every day to work on.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Manal.
you, all of you.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, and specifically, I would like to extend on behalf of EU Business School's management a massive appreciation to the online participants who joined us and also the panelists. But allow me to conclude then, based on what Manal, Julian and Alexandra shared with us, that even in times of crisis, business and education matters. Delivering quality instruction is clearly a challenge in the current circumstances. The magnitude of the challenge, however, varies widely, and EU Business School has been able to roll out synchronous and asynchronistic online learning. EU Business School remain committed to improving the global capacities in providing a more informed and skilled leadership and future managers that would be able to prosper in the post-pandemic world. EU Business School's instructional designers and program managers have been working hard on adjusting, advancing, and expanding its online learning offer and study programs. In addition to its classic time-proven online MBA programs and massive open online courses in business and management, EU Business Schools remain very committed more than ever to offer you the opportunity to study in any of the advanced self-paced online courses, separate modules, as well as the open interactive webinars, such as the one we have the honor and pleasure to share together today, that regularly brings together leading institutions, academics, and business leaders. Alexandra, Julian, Manal, thank you for your insights. Thank you for sharing your current experiences. Thank you for your vision, but most importantly, thank you sincerely for your leadership. As we are all in this together, Let us learn with and from each other and be the change that we want to see in the new world that we are about to embrace and that we want to witness. I thank you all very, very much. Thank you.